The dust from the stagecoach had barely settled when Eliza Hartwell stumbled into the sweltering heat of Amarillo, Texas, clutching her worn carpetbag and the secret growing beneath her corset, wondering how she would survive the next 9 months in a town where unmarried pregnant women were cast out like lepers. It was July 1882, and the unforgiving sun beat down on the rutted main street with merciless intensity. Eliza pressed one trembling hand against her abdomen, feeling the barely perceptible swell that would soon betray her condition to everyone. Her dress clung to her skin, damp with perspiration and fear. She had $23 to her name, no family within 500 miles, and a heart shattered into so many pieces she wondered if it would ever mend. Thomas Whitmore had promised her forever. He had spoken those words beneath the elm tree behind her father's farm in Missouri, his hands cupping her face as fireflies danced around them in the warm summer twilight. He had promised her a home, children, a life filled with love and security. Then he had taken her innocence in the hayloft one breathless August evening, and 3 weeks later, he had vanished without so much as a goodbye, leaving only a note saying he had gone west to seek his fortune and would send for her when he was established. That had been 4 months ago. No letter had come, no money had arrived, only silence, thick and suffocating as the humidity that pressed down on her now. Eliza forced herself to walk forward, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust. The town sprawled before her in shades of brown and gray, false-fronted buildings lining both sides of the wide thoroughfare. Cowboys lounged outside the saloon, their spurs glinting in the harsh light. A wagon rattled past, driven by a weathered man who did not spare her a glance. Women in proper bonnets crossed to the other side of the street when they saw her disheveled appearance, her traveling dress dusty and creased, her blonde hair escaping its pins. She needed work. She needed shelter. She needed help, though her pride burned at the thought of accepting charity. The hotel loomed ahead, a 2-story structure that looked slightly more respectable than the boarding houses she had passed. Eliza pushed through the door, grateful for the shade inside. A portly man with impressive mutton chops stood behind the desk, eyeing her with undisguised suspicion. "I need a room," Eliza said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just for a few nights, until I can find work." "That will be $2 a night," the clerk said, his gaze traveling over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "In advance." Eliza counted out $6 from her precious store of money, watching it disappear into the man's meaty palm. He slid a key across the desk without ceremony. "Second floor, end of the hall, no visitors, no noise, and no cooking in the rooms." The room was small and stifling, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window that overlooked the alley behind the building. Eliza sank onto the bed, finally allowing the tears she had been holding back to fall. She cried for her innocence, for her trust, for the future she had imagined that would never come to pass. She cried for the child growing inside her, who would be born into shame and hardship. And she cried for herself, alone and afraid, in a harsh land that showed little mercy to women in her position. When the tears finally subsided, Eliza washed her face in the tepid water from the pitcher, changed into her only other dress, and went back downstairs. She would not give up. She could not afford to. This child needed a mother who was strong, who could survive, who could provide. The next 3 days passed in a blur of rejection. The millinery shop had no positions available. The general store owner took one look at her youth and inexperience and sent her away. The restaurant needed a cook, but only one who could lift heavy pots and work 12-hour shifts. And when Eliza hesitated, uncertain if she could manage such labor in her condition, the position went to someone else. By the 4th day, Eliza's money had dwindled to $11, and desperation clawed at her throat. She sat on a bench outside the livery stable, trying to formulate a plan when she overheard 2 ranch hands talking. "Heard the Double R is looking for a housekeeper," one of them said, spitting tobacco juice into the dust. "Old Mrs. Reynolds passed last month, and Cole has been trying to manage on his own. Place is probably a disaster by now." "Cole Brennan?" the other man laughed. "That man can rope a steer and break a wild horse, but I would wager good money he cannot boil an egg without burning it. Someone should tell him about the posting." Someone did. He put up a notice at the general store 3 days ago. "Guess nobody wants to work way out there. It is a good hour's ride from town." Eliza stood immediately, her heart hammering against her ribs. A position outside of town might actually work in her favor, Fewer prying eyes, less gossip, more privacy when her condition became obvious. She hurried to the general store, and there, tacked to the board near the door, was a handwritten notice. Housekeeper wanted, room and board provided plus $20 monthly. Must be able to cook, clean, and manage household affairs. Inquire at Double R Ranch, 5 miles north on Old Creek Road. Ask for Cole Brennan, $20 a month and a place to live. It was more than Eliza had dared to hope for. She copied down the directions, returned to her hotel room to gather her few belongings, and checked out with the sneering clerk. Then she asked the livery owner if he could direct her to the Double R Ranch. "You planning to walk?" the man asked, incredulous. "It is 5 miles through rough country. I can rent you a horse for 4 bits. Eliza did not want to part with the money, but she had little choice. She paid the fee, and the liveryman helped her onto a gentle mare. Eliza had ridden before, though not often, and she gripped the reins with determination as she guided the horse north out of town. The landscape opened up before her, vast and untamed. Rolling grassland stretched to the horizon, broken by clusters of mesquite and the occasional rocky outcropping. The sky was enormous, a brilliant blue dome unmarred by clouds. Despite her anxiety, Eliza felt something loosen in her chest. There was a raw beauty here, a sense of possibility that the cramped streets of Amarillo had lacked. The ranch appeared gradually, first as a shimmer in the heat, then as distinct structures. A 2-story house built of whitewashed wood stood at the center, surrounded by a rail fence. Behind it stretched corrals and outbuildings, a barn, and what looked like a bunkhouse. Cattle dotted the distant fields, dark shapes against the golden grass. Eliza dismounted near the house, her legs shaky from the ride. She tied the mare to the fence and approached the front door, smoothing her dress and tucking stray hair behind her ears. Before she could knock, the door swung open, and she found herself face to face with a man who took her breath away. Dark brown, slightly too long. Curling at dark brown, slightly too long, curling at his collar. His face was all strong angles, high cheekbones, and a square jaw shadowed with several days' worth of stubble. But it was his eyes that captured her attention, a startling shade of blue-gray that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed defenses. He looked surprised to see her, his gaze traveling from her face to her worn dress to the carpet bag in her hand. "Help you, miss?" His voice was deep, with a rough edge that suggested he did not use it often for casual conversation. "I am here about the position," Eliza said, lifting her chin. "The housekeeper position." Cole's eyebrows rose. "You came all the way from town alone?" "I did. I am capable of riding 5 miles without incident, Mr. Brennan, and I am equally capable of managing a household." She hoped her voice sounded more confident than she felt. He studied her for a long moment, and Eliza forced herself to meet his gaze without flinching. She could not afford to appear weak or uncertain. Finally, Cole stepped back and gestured for her to enter. "Come in. We can talk inside." The interior of the house was indeed a disaster, just as the ranch hands had predicted. Dishes were piled in the kitchen, dust covered every surface, and the furniture looked as though it had not seen a proper cleaning in months. But the bones of the house were good, with high ceilings, large windows, and solid construction. Eliza could see its potential beneath the neglect. Cole led her to the kitchen and cleared a space at the table for them to sit. He did not offer her refreshment, seemingly unaware of the social niceties. Eliza folded her hands in her lap and waited. "I will be honest with you, Miss Hartwell, Eliza Hartwell. Miss Hartwell, I need help. The ranch hands take care of the livestock and the land, but the house has gone to ruin since my aunt passed. I need someone who can cook 3 meals a day, keep the house clean, do laundry, and handle the general running of things. The work is hard, and the isolation can be difficult. The nearest neighbor is 3 miles away. I understand. You would have your own room upstairs. Meals are provided, along with $20 at the end of each month. I expect honesty, hard work, and discretion. I do not tolerate gossip or drama." Eliza met his eyes steadily. "I can offer you all of those things, Mr. Brennan. I need this position, and I will work harder than anyone else you might hire." Something in her voice must have convinced him, because Cole nodded slowly. "When can you start?" "Immediately." "Good." He stood, and Eliza realized the interview was over. "I will show you to your room. Supper is usually around 7. There are 4 ranch hands who eat in the bunkhouse, but I take my meals here in the house. If you can manage something for tonight, that would be appreciated." He led her upstairs to a small bedroom at the back of the house. It was simply furnished with a bed, a dresser, and a wardrobe, but it was clean and had a window that overlooked the ranch. After the suffocating hotel room, it felt like a sanctuary. "Thank you," Eliza said softly. "You will not regret this, Mr. Brennan." He paused in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I hope not, Miss Hartwell. I truly hope not." After he left, Eliza unpacked her few belongings and changed into her work dress. Then she went downstairs and surveyed the kitchen with a critical eye. It would take days to restore order, but she could at least make a decent meal tonight. She found eggs, bacon, potatoes, and the ingredients for biscuits. The pantry was well stocked, which suggested that Cole could at least manage to purchase supplies, even if he could not cook them properly. As she worked, Eliza felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. Her hands knew what to do, falling into familiar rhythms. She had been cooking since she was old enough to reach the stove, helping her mother feed a family of 7. These skills, at least, had not abandoned her. By 7 o'clock, she had fried bacon, scrambled eggs, boiled potatoes, and baked a pan of golden biscuits. The kitchen smelled wonderful, and Eliza felt a small spark of pride as she set the table. Cole appeared exactly on time, his hair damp as though he had just washed up at the pump outside. He stopped short when he saw the meal laid out, and for a moment, something that might have been gratitude flickered across his face. "This looks good," he said simply, taking his seat. They ate in silence at first, the only sounds the clink of silverware against plates. Eliza was acutely aware of his presence across from her, the way he moved with economic grace, the calluses on his hands that spoke of years of ranch work. She wondered about his story, about the aunt who had raised him, about what had brought him to this isolated place. "You cook well," Cole said finally, breaking the silence. "Better than I expected." "Thank you. My mother taught me." "Where is your family, Miss Hartwell, if you do not mind my asking?" Eliza had prepared for this question. "Missouri. My parents passed away last year within months of each other. Fever. I had no siblings, no other relatives. I came west looking for a fresh start." It was close enough to the truth. Her parents were dead, though they had passed 3 years ago, not one. She did have siblings, 5 of them, but they were all married with families of their own, and none of them had been willing to take in a sister who had shamed herself. The fresh start part was entirely true. Cole nodded, asking no further questions, and Eliza felt a rush of relief. He was not the prying type. That suited her perfectly. Over the next 2 weeks, Eliza threw herself into her work with single-minded determination. She scrubbed the house from top to bottom, washing windows, beating rugs, polishing furniture until it gleamed. She organized the pantry, mended torn curtains, and established a routine for meals and laundry. The physical labor exhausted her, but it also kept her mind occupied, leaving little room for the dark thoughts that threatened to consume her. Cole was an ideal employer in many ways. He was polite but distant, never intrusive, never inappropriate. He rose before dawn, and often did not return until after dusk, spending his days working the ranch with his men. He ate the meals Eliza prepared with obvious appreciation, but few words. He paid her promptly and made sure she had everything she needed, but he remained a mystery, a closed book she could not read. The ranch hands were more forthcoming. They ate in the bunkhouse, but occasionally they would stop by the kitchen for coffee or to deliver eggs from the chicken coop. There was Miguel, the foreman, a man in his 40s with wise eyes and a quick smile. There was young Billy, barely 19, who blushed whenever Eliza spoke to him. There was Frank, grizzled and taciturn, who had been working ranches since before Eliza was born. And there was Samuel, who told jokes and stories to anyone who would listen. From them, Eliza learned more about Cole Brennan. He was 30 years old, born in Texas, raised by his aunt after his parents died in a Comanche raid when he was 8. He had built the Double R from nothing, starting with 100 head of cattle and a dream. He was fair to his men, tough but never cruel. He kept to himself, rarely went into town, and had no interest in the social gatherings that the other ranchers attended. "He is a good man," Miguel told her one morning, accepting a cup of coffee. "Lonely, I think, but good." Eliza understood loneliness. It was a constant companion now, a hollow ache that no amount of work could quite fill. At night, lying in her narrow bed, she would place her hand on her belly and wonder about the future. She was 3 months along now, and soon her condition would become obvious. What would Cole do when he discovered the truth? Would he turn her out, disgusted by her deception? The thought terrified her, but she pushed it aside. She would deal with that problem when it arrived. For now, she had shelter, food, and work. It was more than she had dared to hope for. August gave way to September, and the brutal heat began to ease slightly. The grasslands turned from gold to brown, and the cattle grew fat on the good grazing. Eliza's belly began to round noticeably, and she let out the seams of her dresses, wearing loose aprons to disguise her shape. But she knew she was running out of time. It was a cool morning in late September when everything changed. Eliza was in the kitchen, kneading bread dough, when she heard raised voices outside. She looked out the window to see Cole and his men gathered near the barn, surrounding a figure on horseback. Even from a distance, Eliza could see the tension in their postures. Curiosity overcame caution, and she wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside. As she approached, the figure on horseback became clear, and Eliza's heart stopped. Thomas Whitmore sat astride a fine bay gelding, looking every inch the successful gentleman in his tailored coat and polished boots. His blonde hair was neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven. He looked prosperous and confident, nothing like the farm boy who had courted her back in Missouri. His eyes found hers across the yard, and she saw shock register on his face, followed quickly by something that might have been fear. "Eliza?" She could not move, could not breathe. All the carefully constructed walls she had built around her heart crumbled in an instant. Cole's gaze swung between them, his expression hardening. "You know this man?" Cole's voice was low, dangerous in a way Eliza had never heard before. Eliza could not find words. Her vision was narrowing, black spots dancing at the edges. The world tilted, and she felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Cole had moved with startling speed, and now he held her against his chest, his face close to hers. "Miss Hartwell? Eliza?" She blinked up at him, disoriented. "I am sorry. I just felt dizzy for a moment." But Cole was not looking at her face anymore. His gaze had dropped to her midsection, where her apron had shifted, revealing the unmistakable swell of her belly. She saw understanding dawn in his eyes, followed by a complicated mix of emotions she could not begin to parse. "Get off my land," Cole said, his voice hard as iron, though he did not look away from Eliza. "Now, wait just a minute," Thomas began, dismounting. "I came here looking for work, and I find my intended—" "Your intended?" Cole's laugh was harsh. "Is that what you call a woman you abandoned while carrying your child?" Thomas's face flushed red. "That is not... It is more complicated than that. Get off my land." Cole's voice dropped to a growl. "Before I throw you off." Miguel stepped forward, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. The other ranch hands moved to flank him. Thomas looked around at the hostile faces and seemed to realize he was outnumbered. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "Fine, I am going. But Eliza, we need to talk. This concerns me too." "No," Cole said flatly. "It does not concern you at all. You gave up that right when you left." Thomas opened his mouth to argue, but something in Cole's expression made him think better of it. He remounted his horse and rode off without another word. Though he looked back once, his face twisted with emotions Eliza could not read. The silence that followed was suffocating. Cole still held her in his arms, and Eliza became acutely aware of the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. She pulled away gently, and he released her immediately, though his hand lingered at her elbow to steady her. "Thank you," she whispered. "I am fine now." "We need to talk," Cole said, his voice gentler now. "Inside?" She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. This was it. The moment she had been dreading. He would demand an explanation, and then he would tell her to leave, and she would be back where she started, alone and desperate. Cole guided her into the house and settled her in a chair in the parlor. He poured her a glass of water from the pitcher on the sideboard and handed it to her. Then he sat across from her, his elbows on his knees, his eyes searching her face. "How far along are you?" The directness of the question surprised her. "Nearly 4 months." He nodded slowly. "That man, Thomas, he is the father?" "Yes." The word was barely audible. "Did he force you?" "No." Eliza looked down at her hands, shame burning in her chest. "I was foolish. I believed him when he said he loved me, when he promised we would marry. I thought, it does not matter what I thought. I was wrong." "He left you?" "Yes. He said he was going west to make his fortune." He promised to send for me once he was established. I waited. When I realized I was pregnant, I waited even longer, certain he would return. But he never did. No letter, no money, nothing. So I came looking for him. And instead, you found my advertisement. Eliza nodded. I did not mean to deceive you, Mr. Brennan. I needed work, needed a place to stay. I was running out of options. I thought perhaps I could work for a few months, save some money, and then figure out what to do when the baby came. I know it was dishonest. I know I should have told you from the beginning. I understand if you want me to leave. She forced herself to look up at him, expecting to see anger or disgust. Instead, she found something that looked almost like pain. When I was 8 years old, Cole said quietly, Comanches raided our homestead. My father tried to fight them off. They killed him and my mother both. I hid in the root cellar and listened to it happen. My aunt found me 2 days later, nearly dead from thirst and fear. She brought me here, to this ranch, and raised me as her own. She taught me that family is not just blood. It is who you choose to stand with when the world is harsh and unforgiving. Eliza did not know what to say. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, though she had not realized she was crying. My aunt would have taken you in without hesitation, Cole continued. She would have looked at you and seen someone who needed help, someone who was trying to survive in a world that is not kind to women in your situation. I would like to think I am half the person she was. What are you saying? Cole leaned forward, his blue-gray eyes intense. I am saying you can stay, for as long as you need. We will figure out the rest as we go. But the baby will be born here, under my roof, with a doctor present. After that, we will make sure you and the child have everything you need. I will not turn you out, Eliza. I give you my word. The relief was so overwhelming that Eliza nearly collapsed. Fresh tears coursed down her cheeks, and she covered her face with her hands, unable to contain the sobs that shook her body. She felt Cole's hand on her shoulder, warm and steady, and she clung to that small comfort like a lifeline. Thank you, she managed to gasp between sobs. Thank you so much. I will work harder than ever, I promise. I will earn this kindness. You already have, Cole said simply. Now, you should rest. You have had a shock. But Eliza shook her head. The bread dough needs to finish rising, and I need to start on lunch and… Eliza! Cole's voice was firm. Rest. The bread can wait. The men can make their own lunch for once. You need to take care of yourself and the baby. She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was suddenly overwhelming. Cole helped her upstairs to her room, and she lay down on the bed fully clothed. Within minutes, she was asleep. She woke as the sun was setting, golden light streaming through her window. For a moment, she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was or why she felt so drained. Then the memories came rushing back, and she sat up quickly, her heart racing. Thomas was here, in Texas, looking prosperous and well-fed while she struggled to survive. And Cole knew about the baby. Cole knew everything, and he had not turned her away. Eliza went downstairs, expecting to find the kitchen in disarray, but instead, she found Cole standing at the stove, attempting to fry eggs. The results were not impressive. The eggs burned at the edges and runny in the center, but the effort touched her deeply. You should have woken me, she said from the doorway. Cole turned, and there was something different in his expression, a softness that had not been there before. You needed sleep. I can manage a simple meal. That is debatable, Eliza said, eyeing the scorched eggs with amusement. A smile tugged at the corner of Cole's mouth, and Eliza realized it was the first time she had seen him smile. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. Sit, Eliza said, taking over at the stove. Let me do this. It is my job after all. They worked together in companionable silence, Eliza cooking and Cole setting the table. It felt natural, comfortable in a way that surprised her. When they sat down to eat, the awkwardness that had characterized their previous meals was gone, replaced by something that felt almost like friendship. What will you do if he comes back? Cole asked as they were finishing their meal. Eliza had been thinking about that all afternoon. I do not want to see him. I do not want him in this child's life. He made his choice when he left. He might not accept that. Then you will throw him off your land again, Eliza said with more confidence than she felt. You were very effective the first time. Cole's smile returned, brief but genuine. I meant what I said this morning, Eliza. You are under my protection now. No one, including Thomas Whitmore, will hurt you while you are on my ranch. The words should have been comforting, but instead they stirred something complicated in Eliza's chest. She looked at Cole across the table, really looked at him, and saw not just an employer, but a man who had shown her more kindness and respect than anyone in months. A man who was strong and capable, and surprisingly gentle. A man who made her feel safe for the first time since her world had fallen apart. It was a dangerous feeling, she knew. She had no business developing tender emotions for Cole Brennan. She was pregnant with another man's child, carrying the visible proof of her shame. Cole had offered her employment and protection, nothing more. To imagine anything else would be foolish and presumptuous. But as the days passed and September turned to October, Eliza found it increasingly difficult to ignore the growing connection between them. Cole began to linger at meals, asking about her day, sharing stories about the ranch. He started coming to the kitchen in the evenings after his work was done, sitting at the table while she prepared dough for the next day's bread or mended clothes. Sometimes they talked, and sometimes they simply enjoyed the comfortable silence, but his presence became the highlight of Eliza's day. She noticed small things about him, the way he was always gentle with the horses, speaking to them in a low voice that soothed their nerves, the way he treated his ranch hands with respect, never asking them to do work he would not do himself, the way he carved small wooden figures in the evenings, his large hands surprisingly deft, as he shaped horses and cattle from scraps of pine. One evening in mid-October, Cole presented her with a small wooden cradle, beautifully crafted with smooth rockers and delicate spindles. "For the baby," he said gruffly, setting it on the kitchen floor. "I thought you might need it." Eliza stared at the cradle, her throat tight with emotion. "Cole, this is beautiful. You made this?" "It is just something to keep the baby safe," he said, looking uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Every child should have a proper cradle." Eliza ran her fingers over the smooth wood, marveling at the craftsmanship. "Thank you. This is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me." Cole looked at her then, really looked at her, and Eliza saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. It was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual reserve, but she had seen it. Interest, attraction, possibility. "You deserve kindness, Eliza," he said quietly. "You deserve a great deal more than you have been given." The moment hung between them, fragile and charged with unspoken possibility. Then Cole cleared his throat and stepped back. "I should check on the horses before bed. Good night." "Good night," Eliza whispered, watching him go. She stood in the kitchen for a long time after he left, one hand resting on the cradle, the other on her belly. The baby kicked, a gentle flutter that always made her smile. Soon this child would be real, a person she could hold and love. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time since Thomas had left, Eliza felt something that might have been hope. November brought cooler temperatures and changing leaves on the few trees that dotted the landscape. Eliza's belly had grown significantly, and there was no hiding her condition anymore. Of course, but no one confronted them. Of course, but no one confronted them directly. Cole Brennan was respected in Amarillo, and his protection meant something. It was on one of these trips to town that they encountered Thomas again. He was coming out of the saloon as they were loading supplies into the wagon, and he stopped short when he saw them together. "Eliza," he said, his voice carrying across the street, "I need to speak with you." Cole stepped between them, his body a wall of protection. "I thought I made it clear you were not welcome near her." "I have a right to speak to the mother of my child," Thomas insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "You have no rights," Cole said, his voice low and dangerous. "You gave them up when you abandoned her." "I did not abandon her. I came west to build a future for us. I was going to send for her." "Then where is the letter?" Eliza found her voice, stepping around Cole to face Thomas directly. "Where is the money you promised? Where is any evidence that you ever intended to keep your word?" Thomas flushed, unable to meet her eyes. "It took longer than I expected to get established. I was waiting until I had something real to offer you. And now?" Eliza gestured to his fine clothes. "You clearly have money now. Yet you never came looking for me. Never sent word. I could have died, Thomas. I could have starved in the streets and you would never have known. That is not fair. I did not know you were in trouble. You did not care enough to find out." The words came out hard and bitter. "You took what you wanted from me, promised me forever, and then left me pregnant and alone. Do not stand there now and claim you have any rights where I or this baby are concerned." Thomas looked around at the growing crowd of onlookers, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of this confrontation. "We should discuss this privately." "There is nothing to discuss," Cole said firmly. "The lady has made her position clear. Now, I suggest you move along before this becomes unpleasant." Thomas's face hardened. "And who are you to tell me what to do? Her new lover, trading one man for another, Eliza? How convenient." Cole moved so fast that Eliza barely saw it. One moment Thomas was standing there with a sneer on his face. The next he was sprawled in the dirt, blood streaming from his nose. Cole stood over him, his fists clenched, violence radiating from every line of his body. "Watch your mouth," Cole said softly. "Miss Hartwell is a lady, and you will treat her as such. She is under my protection, living on my ranch, and working as my housekeeper. That is all you or anyone else needs to know. If I hear you have been spreading rumors or causing her any trouble, I will find you, and this will seem gentle by comparison. Do we understand each other?" Thomas scrambled to his feet, holding his bleeding nose. "You will regret this, Brennan." "I doubt it." Thomas retreated, casting one last venomous look at Eliza before disappearing into the crowd. The onlookers dispersed slowly, their expressions ranging from shock to approval. Cole turned to Eliza, his face softening with concern. "Did he hurt you? Are you all right?" "I am fine," Eliza said, though she was shaking. "Thank you for defending me." Cole's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Always, I will always defend you." They finished loading the wagon in silence and started the journey back to the ranch. Eliza could not stop thinking about Cole's words. "I will always defend you. Always." It implied a future, a continuation, something more than just the temporary arrangement they had agreed upon. "Cole," she said hesitantly as the ranch came into view, "what will happen after the baby is born? Have you thought about that?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. "I have thought about little else," he admitted. "What do you want to happen, Eliza?" It was the question she had been avoiding because the answer frightened her. What did she want? She wanted to stay on the ranch. She wanted to continue cooking Cole's meals and managing his household. She wanted to raise her baby in the room upstairs with the window that overlooked the grasslands. She wanted to sit with Cole in the evenings and listen to his stories and watch his hands shape wood into beautiful things. She wanted him. The realization struck her with the force of a lightning bolt. She had fallen in love with Cole Brennan, but she could not tell him that. He had. But she could not tell him that. He had been nothing but kind to her, offering her shelter and protection when she needed it most. To burden him with her feelings would be unfair and inappropriate. He deserved better than a woman pregnant with another man's child, a woman carrying the visible proof of her mistakes. "I want to continue working for you," she said carefully. "If you will have me, the baby will not interfere with my duties. I will make sure of that." "Eliza." Cole pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and turned to face her. "Is that truly all you want?" His eyes searched hers, and Eliza felt as though he could see straight into her soul. She wanted to be brave, to tell him the truth, but fear held her tongue. "What else could I possibly want?" she whispered. Cole looked as though he might say something, but then he shook his head and climbed down from the wagon. "I will unload the supplies. You should go rest." Eliza watched him walk away, feeling as though she had missed something important, some crucial moment that she could not get back. The incident with Thomas cast a shadow over the next few weeks, but life on the ranch continued. Eliza's belly grew rounder, and the baby became more active, kicking and turning at all hours. Cole was endlessly fascinated by this, often placing his hand gently on her belly when the baby moved, his face lighting up with wonder. "Strong little one," he said one evening, feeling a particularly vigorous kick, "going to be a fighter." "Takes after the mother," Miguel joked from the doorway, where he had stopped to return some tools. "Miss Eliza is the strongest person I know." Eliza blushed at the compliment, but Cole nodded seriously. "Miguel is right. You are stronger than you know, Eliza." These moments of casual intimacy were becoming more frequent, and Eliza treasured each one. Cole began to touch her more often, a hand at her back to steady her on the stairs, his arm around her shoulders when she was tired, his fingers brushing hers when he handed her something. Each touch sent warmth flooding through her body, awakening feelings she had thought dead and buried. December brought the first frost, and with it, the realization that the baby would arrive soon. Eliza was 7 months along now, her belly enormous, her back aching constantly. Cole had hired a woman from town, Mrs. Patterson, to come stay at the ranch for the last weeks of Eliza's pregnancy. She was a midwife with decades of experience, a no-nonsense woman who took charge of the preparations with brisk efficiency. "Baby will come in late January or early February," she announced after examining Eliza. "Everything looks healthy. The child is positioned well. You have done a good job taking care of yourself, dear." "Cole has taken care of me," Eliza said softly. "I could not have done this without him." Mrs. Patterson's sharp eyes traveled between Eliza and Cole, who was hovering in the doorway looking worried. "I see," she said, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Well, he has done well by you. That much is certain." Christmas came, and Cole surprised Eliza by cutting down a small pine tree and setting it up in the parlor. They decorated it with strings of popcorn and paper ornaments that Billy had made, and on Christmas morning, Cole presented her with a package wrapped in brown paper. She clutched it to her chest, blinking. She clutched it to her chest, blinking back tears. "Cole, this is too much." "It is not enough," he said quietly. "Not nearly enough for everything you have brought to this house, to my life." Eliza looked up at him, and the expression in his eyes stole her breath. There was no mistaking the emotion she saw there. It was love, pure and simple and unmistakable. "Cole," she whispered, but before she could say more, a sharp pain lanced through her belly, making her gasp. "What is wrong?" Cole was at her side instantly, his hands gripping her shoulders. "I do not know. It just hurt suddenly." Another pain followed, and Eliza pressed her hand to her belly, frightened. "It is too early. The baby is not due for another month." Mrs. Patterson appeared, summoned by Cole's shout. "With you?" Cole carried her upstairs with you. Cole carried her upstairs despite her protests, settling her gently on the bed. He sat beside her, holding her hand, his face tight with worry. "I am fine," Eliza assured him. "Mrs. Patterson said it was just false labor." "You frightened me," Cole admitted. "The thought of anything happening to you—" He broke off, unable to finish the sentence. Eliza squeezed his hand. "I am not going anywhere. I promise." "Good." Cole lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Because I do not think I could bear to lose you." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Eliza knew she should say something, should tell him how she felt. But Mrs. Patterson bustled in with tea and insisted Cole leave so Eliza could rest. The false labor proved to be a harbinger. 2 weeks later, on a cold January morning, Eliza woke before dawn with genuine contractions. She lay in bed for an hour, timing them, trying not to panic. When they became regular and intense, she made her way downstairs, gripping the banister with each wave of pain. Cole was already in the kitchen, making coffee. He took one look at her face and set the pot down. "The baby? Yes, it is coming." What followed was a blur of activity. Mrs. Patterson took charge, setting up the bedroom with clean linens and hot water. Cole rode to town to fetch the doctor, returning within 2 hours with a tired-looking man who smelled faintly of whiskey but seemed competent. The ranch hands kept their distance, though Miguel brought fresh water whenever Mrs. Patterson called for it. The labor was long and difficult. Eliza had heard stories about childbirth, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. Wave after wave of pain crashed over her, each one more intense than the last. She lost track of time, aware only of the agony and the encouraging words of Mrs. Patterson. "You are doing wonderfully, dear. Just a little more. Push now, push." Through the haze of pain, Eliza was aware of Cole. He had refused to leave, despite Mrs. Patterson's protests that childbirth was no place for a man. He stood near the door, his face pale but determined, his presence a constant source of strength. "Cole," Eliza gasped during a brief respite between contractions. "I am scared." He was at her side immediately, taking her hand. "I am right here. You can do this, Eliza. You are the strongest person I know." She clung to his hand as the next contraction hit, squeezing so hard she must have hurt him, but he never flinched. He stayed with her through every moment, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, murmuring words of encouragement, anchoring her when she felt as though she might drift away on a sea of pain. Finally, as the sun was setting on that long January day, the baby arrived. The first cry filled the room, thin and reedy, but unmistakably alive. Eliza fell back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure, but desperate to see her child. "A boy," Mrs. Patterson announced, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket. A healthy baby boy. She placed him in Eliza's arms, and Eliza looked down at her son with wonder. He was tiny, red-faced, and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that seemed to look right into her soul. 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes. He was beautiful, and he was hers. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I am your mama." Cole stood beside the bed, looking down at the baby with an expression of such tenderness that Eliza's heart squeezed. "He is perfect," Cole said softly. "What will you name him?" Eliza had thought about this for months, and the answer came easily. James Cole Hartwell." Cole's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. "You are giving him my name?" "For his middle name, yes, if you do not mind. You have been more of a father to him already than Thomas ever could be. It seems fitting." Cole reached out tentatively and touched the baby's tiny hand. James immediately wrapped his fingers around Cole's thumb, gripping with surprising strength. Something shifted in Cole's face, and Eliza saw the exact moment he fell in love with her son. "I am honored," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "Truly honored, Eliza." The days after James's birth passed in a haze of exhaustion and joy. Eliza was amazed by how much work one tiny baby required. He needed to be fed every few hours, changed constantly, soothed when he cried. Mrs. Patterson stayed for 2 weeks, helping with the household tasks and teaching Eliza how to care for her son. But even after the midwife left, Eliza never felt overwhelmed because Cole was always there. He took to fatherhood as though he had been born for it, despite having no blood relationship to James. He would hold the baby for hours, walking the floors when James was fussy, singing old Cowboy songs in his deep voice until the baby fell asleep. He made sure Eliza ate and rested, taking over many of the household tasks himself. He carved toys for James, tiny horses and cattle that he hung above the cradle. The ranch hands were equally smitten. Miguel carved a small rattle from a piece of horn. Billy brought wildflowers for Eliza and spent his evenings making faces at James, trying to elicit a smile. Even grizzled Frank softened when he held the baby, his weathered face creasing into an expression of pure gentleness. "This ranch needed a baby," Frank said one evening, carefully returning James to Eliza's arms. "Brings life to the place." February gave way to March, and Texas began to thaw from the mild winter cold. Eliza gradually resumed her household duties, though Cole insisted she not overwork herself. They fell into a new routine, one that included James in every aspect. The cradle sat in the kitchen while Eliza cooked, so she could watch her son. Cole brought him outside on warm days, showing him the horses and the cattle, talking to him as though the infant could understand every word. It was a beautiful life, peaceful and full, but there was an ache in Eliza's heart that would not ease. She loved Cole desperately, completely, but she did not know how to tell him. The gulf between employer and employee seemed too wide to cross, even though they had long since ceased to behave as such. Cole treated James as his own son, and he treated Eliza with a tenderness that went far beyond simple kindness. But he had never spoken the words, never made any declaration of his feelings. Perhaps he did not feel the same way. Perhaps his affection was merely that of a friend, nothing more. The thought was agonizing, but Eliza forced herself to accept it. She had a home, a child, and security. That was more than she had any right to expect. To wish for more seemed greedy. But late at night, lying in her bed with James sleeping peacefully in the cradle beside her, Eliza allowed herself to dream. She dreamed of being Cole's wife, not just his housekeeper. She dreamed of more children, brothers and sisters for James. She dreamed of growing old on this ranch, watching the seasons change, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and cherished. They were beautiful dreams, but she feared they would remain nothing more than that. It was a warm afternoon in late March when Thomas Whitmore returned. Eliza was hanging laundry on the line behind the house, James napping in a basket at her feet, when she heard the sound of an approaching horse. She turned, shading her eyes against the sun, and felt her stomach drop when she recognized the rider. Thomas dismounted near the fence and walked toward her with determined strides. He looked different than the last time she had seen him, thinner, unkempt, with a desperate edge to his movements that frightened her. "Eliza, we need to talk." "No, we do not." Eliza positioned herself between Thomas and the basket where James slept. "You need to leave. Cole made it very clear you are not welcome here." "Cole Brennan does not own you," Thomas snapped. "I have been thinking, and I have decided to do the right thing. I will marry you. We can raise the child together." Eliza stared at him in disbelief. "You must be joking." "I am serious. Look, I know I made mistakes. I should not have left the way I did. But I am here now, ready to make it right. We can go back to Missouri, start fresh, where no one knows us." "No. Be reasonable, Eliza. What kind of life can you have here? You are a housekeeper, for God's sake, living on another man's charity. Your son deserves his real father." "His real father?" Eliza's voice rose. "You abandoned us. You left me pregnant and alone with no money and no prospects. Cole gave us a home when we had nowhere else to go. He has been more of a father to James in 3 months than you will ever be." "I am his blood," Thomas insisted. "That matters?" "It matters less than you think." Cole's voice came from behind Thomas, hard and cold. He stood on the porch, holding a rifle loosely in his hands. "I believe you were told not to come back here." Thomas spun around, his face flushing with anger. "This is between me and Eliza." "No, it is not. You made it my business when you came onto my land and threatened my family." "Your family?" Thomas laughed bitterly. "That is rich. You were playing house with another man's leftovers, Brennan? Does that make you feel like a big man?" Cole moved so fast that Thomas did not have time to react. He grabbed Thomas by the collar and lifted him nearly off his feet, his face inches from the other man's. "Listen very carefully," Cole said, his voice deadly quiet. "Eliza and James are my family, not by blood, but by choice, which makes the bond even stronger. I love them both more than I value my own life. If you ever come near them again, if you ever speak about them with anything less than the utmost respect, I will make sure you regret it. Am I making myself clear?" Thomas struggled in Cole's grip, but he was no match for the rancher's strength. "You cannot keep me from my own child. I can, and I will. You have no legal claim here. You never married Eliza, never acknowledged the baby, never provided any support. In the eyes of the law, you are nothing to them. Less than nothing." Cole released Thomas with a shove that sent the smaller man stumbling backward. "Get on your horse and ride out of here. If I see you again, I will have you arrested for trespassing, and if you try to take James, I will hunt you down myself. That is not a threat, Whitmore. It is a promise." Thomas looked between Cole and Eliza, and whatever he saw in their faces must have convinced him. He backed away, his expression twisting with impotent rage. "This is not over." "Yes," Cole said flatly. "It is." They watched Thomas mount his horse and ride away, disappearing into the distance. Only when he was completely out of sight did Eliza allow herself to breathe. She looked down at James, still sleeping peacefully in his basket, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. "Are you all right?" Cole asked, setting the rifle aside and coming to her. "Yes. Thank you for—" Eliza's voice broke, and suddenly she was crying, all the fear and tension of the encounter pouring out. "I was so scared. What if he tries to take James? What if he goes to a judge and claims paternity?" "He will not." Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I meant what I said, Eliza. You and James are my family. I will protect you both with everything I have." "You said you loved us," Eliza whispered against his chest. "Did you mean that?" She felt Cole's body tense, and for a moment she feared she had overstepped. But then he pulled back just enough to look down at her, his hands framing her face. "I have loved you since the day you appeared on my doorstep, determined and fierce and so beautiful it hurt to look at you. I have loved you through every moment since, watching you grow stronger, watching you become a mother, watching you fill my empty house with life and warmth. I love everything about you, Eliza. Your courage, your kindness, your strength. I love the way you sing to James when you think no one is listening. I love the way you smile at me over breakfast. I love the way you make this ranch feel like a home." Eliza's tears fell faster, but they were tears of joy now. "I love you too. I have loved you for so long, but I did not think you could possibly feel the same way. I am carrying another man's shame, Cole. I thought you could not want someone like me." "Someone like you?" Cole's laugh was gentle. "Eliza, you are the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever known. The circumstances of James's birth do not change that. And he is not another man's son, not in any way that matters. I have loved that boy from the moment he was born. I want to be his father, if you will let me." "He already thinks of you as his father," Eliza said through her tears. "He looks for you when you are not around. He calms when he hears your voice." "Then let me make it official." Cole dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. "Marry me, Eliza. Let me give you and James my name. Let me spend the rest of my life loving you both, and any other children we might have. Make this family real in every sense of the word." Eliza looked down at him, this good, strong man who had saved her when she had nowhere else to turn, who had loved her despite everything, who had claimed her son as his own. There was only one possible answer. "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you." He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that took her breath away. It was nothing like the fumbling, awkward kisses she had shared with Thomas. This was different, deeper, full of promise and love, and a future she had never dared to imagine. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, James had woken and was making small noises from his basket. Cole scooped him up, holding him against his chest. "Did you hear that, little man? Your mama said yes. I get to be your papa for real now." James gurgled and reached for Cole's face, and Eliza's heart felt so full she thought it might burst. This was her family. This was her home. This was the forever she had been promised and never thought she would find. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the ranch. The pastor from town officiated, and Miguel, Billy, Frank, and Samuel stood as witnesses. Eliza wore a new dress that Cole had bought for her, pale blue cotton with white lace at the collar. Cole wore his best suit, looking impossibly handsome and slightly uncomfortable in the formal clothing. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other for the rest of their lives, Eliza thought about how far she had come. A year ago, she had been broken and desperate, abandoned by the man who had promised her forever. Now, she stood beside a man who had proven his love through actions, not just words, who had given her and her son everything without asking for anything in return. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her tenderly, and the small gathering erupted in cheers. They celebrated with a feast that Eliza had prepared the day before, and the ranch hands toasted the newlyweds with whiskey and good wishes. That night, Eliza and Cole retired to the master bedroom, which Cole had spent the past week renovating. He had added a new bed, large enough for two, and had moved James's cradle into the room so they could all be together. As Eliza stood in the doorway, taking it all in, she felt tears prick her eyes once more. "This is our room now," Cole said, coming to stand behind her. "Yours and mine and James's, our family." Eliza turned in his arms, looking up at him with love shining in her eyes. "I never thought I could be this happy. After everything that happened, I believe my chance at happiness was gone forever." "He promised you forever and left you pregnant," Cole said, cupping her face in his hands. "But I am promising you forever now, Eliza Brennan, and I will keep that promise every single day for the rest of my life." They kissed, and it was a promise sealed with passion and tenderness and hope. When they finally climbed into bed together, James sleeping peacefully in his cradle nearby, Eliza felt complete in a way she never had before. This was where she belonged. This was home. The months that followed were the happiest of Eliza's life. She and Cole settled into married life with an ease that surprised them both. The ranch flourished under their combined efforts, and James grew from an infant into a chubby, happy baby who laughed at everything and adored his father with single-minded devotion. Cole was an incredible father. He never missed an opportunity to play with James, to teach him about the ranch, to tell him stories. As James grew older and began to crawl, then toddle, Cole was always there to catch him when he fell, to encourage him when he tried new things, to praise his accomplishments no matter how small. "He is going to be spoiled," Eliza teased one afternoon, watching Cole present James with yet another wooden toy he had carved. "Good," Cole said unrepentantly. "Every child should be spoiled with love, especially this one." By the time James turned 1, Thomas Whitmore was a distant memory. They had heard through town gossip that he had left Texas, heading further west to California. Eliza felt only relief at the news. That chapter of her life was closed, and she had no desire to revisit it. Life on the ranch had its challenges, of course. There were droughts that tested their resources, harsh winters that required careful preparation, and the constant hard work that came with managing a cattle operation. But through it all, Eliza and Cole faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each passing season. 2 years after their marriage, Eliza discovered she was pregnant again. She told Cole one evening after James had been put to bed, nervous about his reaction. They had never explicitly discussed having more children, and she worried that he might feel they already had enough on their hands. But Cole's face lit up with pure joy. "Another baby? Eliza, that is wonderful news." He pulled her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to stop before she got dizzy. Then he knelt down and pressed a kiss to her still flat belly. "Hello in there, little one. I am your papa, and I already love you so much." Eliza ran her fingers through his hair, her heart overflowing. "You really are happy about this?" "I am thrilled. I love being a father. I love our family. The idea of it growing even bigger just makes me happier." This pregnancy was different from the first. Eliza was not afraid or alone. She had a husband who doted on her, a home that was secure, and a community that had come to accept and respect her. When the morning sickness hit, Cole was there with ginger tea and crackers. When her back ached from carrying the extra weight, he rubbed it until she fell asleep. When she felt enormous and ungainly in her final months, he told her she was beautiful every single day. James, now a precocious 3-year-old, was fascinated by the idea of a baby brother or sister. He would talk to Eliza's belly, telling the baby about the horses and the cattle and all the things they would do together when the baby was born. "I will teach you to ride," James announced seriously one day, his small hand pressed against Eliza's round stomach, "and I will protect you from everything scary." "You are going to be a wonderful big brother," Eliza told him, kissing the top of his dark head. The baby arrived on a crisp October morning, 2 weeks earlier than expected. This labor was faster than the first, and by midday Eliza was holding a tiny girl in her arms. She had Cole's blue-gray eyes and a cap of reddish-brown hair that Eliza had no idea where it came from. "A daughter," Cole breathed, staring at the baby with wonder. "We have a daughter." "What should we name her?" Eliza asked. They had discussed names but had not settled on anything definite. Cole reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny fist. "Sarah," he said softly. "After my aunt, Sarah Rose Brennan." "That is perfect," Eliza agreed, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, Sarah Rose. Welcome to our family." James was allowed in to meet his sister shortly after, and his face was a study in wonder as he looked at the tiny baby. "She is so small," he whispered, as though afraid he might wake her. "You were that small once," Cole told him, lifting him up so he could see better. "And now, look how big and strong you are. Sarah will grow too, and you will help take care of her." "I promise," James said solemnly. "I will be the best big brother ever." Life with 2 children was chaotic in the best possible way. Sarah was a fussy baby, prone to colic and sleepless nights, but Eliza and Cole took turns walking the floors with her, supporting each other through the exhaustion. James took his role as big brother very seriously, always wanting to help feed her, or rock her, or fetch things for his mother. The ranch continued to prosper. Cole had become one of the most respected ranchers in the area, known for his fair dealings and his quality cattle. They hired additional ranch hands as the operation grew, and Cole built a new, larger bunkhouse to accommodate them. Eliza managed the household with efficiency and grace, somehow finding time to cook, clean, care for 2 children, and still make Cole feel like the most important person in her world. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Cole took Eliza to the hill overlooking the ranch. They stood together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and looked down at everything they had built. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" Cole asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Sometimes," Eliza admitted. "If Thomas had not left me, I would probably be trapped in some loveless marriage in Missouri, never knowing what real love felt like. If I had not found your advertisement, if you had not taken a chance on a desperate woman with no references and a terrible secret, so much had to go right for us to end up here." "I do not think it was chance," Cole said quietly. "I think it was meant to be. You were meant to find this ranch, and I was meant to find you." Eliza leaned her head against his shoulder, watching as lights began to appear in the house below, where Miguel's wife was watching James and Sarah for the evening. He promised me forever, then left me pregnant, Eliza said softly, echoing words she had whispered to herself so many times in her darkest hours. And you said you would keep that promise. And I have, Cole said, turning her to face him. Every day for 5 years, and I will continue keeping it every day for the rest of our lives. I love you, Eliza Brennan. I love our children. I love the life we have built together. You are my forever, and nothing will ever change that. He kissed her as the last rays of sunlight faded, and Eliza felt the truth of his words in every fiber of her being. This was forever. This was love. This was home. The years continued to roll by, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. When James was 8 and Sarah was 5, Eliza gave birth to twins, 2 boys they named Daniel and Matthew. The house was never quiet again, filled with the sounds of children playing, arguing, laughing, and growing. Cole was a hands-on father with all 4 children, teaching them to ride, to rope, to care for the animals. He taught them to read and write at the kitchen table in the evenings, their heads bent together over books and slates. He told them stories of his own childhood, of their grandmother Sarah, who had raised him with love and kindness, and of how their mother had arrived on the ranch and changed his life forever. James grew into a serious, responsible young man, devoted to the ranch and his family. He had Cole's sense of honor and Eliza's compassion, and everyone who knew him predicted he would do great things. Sarah was bright and fearless, with a quick wit and a stubborn streak that both exasperated and delighted her parents. The twins were inseparable, always getting into mischief together, but their joy was infectious, and no one could stay angry at them for long. Eliza sometimes looked at her children and marveled at how different her life had turned out from what she had imagined that terrible day in July when she had stumbled off the stagecoach in Amarillo. She had been so afraid, so certain that her life was over. Instead, it had just been beginning. The Double R Ranch became known throughout the region not just for its fine cattle, but for the family that ran it. People spoke of Cole and Eliza Brennan with respect and admiration, of the children they were raising with love and values, of the home they had opened to those in need. More than once, a young woman in trouble found her way to the ranch, and Eliza always took them in, remembering her own desperation and offering the same kindness Cole had shown her. "You are collecting strays," Cole teased after Eliza had hired the 3rd such young woman to help with the house and the children. "I am giving them a chance," Eliza corrected, "the way you gave me a chance. Everyone deserves that, Cole. Everyone deserves to be seen as more than their worst mistake." Cole pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "This is why I love you. You have been through so much, and yet you still have the biggest heart of anyone I have ever known." On James's 16th birthday, he asked Cole if they could talk privately. They went out to the barn, and James stood awkwardly, clearly nervous about whatever he wanted to say. "What is on your mind, son?" Cole asked, settling onto a hay bale. James took a deep breath. "I know I am not your blood son. I know my real father left before I was born. But you are the only father I have ever known, and I wonder if I could legally take your name. I do not want to be James Hartwell anymore. I want to be James Brennan, officially." Cole felt tears prick his eyes, and he stood, pulling his son into a tight embrace. "There is nothing I would like more. You have been my son in every way that matters since the day you were born. I would be honored to make it legal." They went to a lawyer in town the next week and filed the papers. When the adoption was finalized, Cole and Eliza threw a party at the ranch, celebrating the official recognition of what had always been true in their hearts. Sarah was fascinated by the whole process. "Does this mean I can get adopted too?" she asked, confused. "You do not need to be adopted, sweetheart," Eliza explained gently. "You are already a Brennan by birth. Your papa is your father in every way." "But James is just as much his son as I am, right?" Sarah asked, with the brutal honesty of a 13-year-old. "Absolutely," Cole said firmly. "Blood does not make a family. Love does, and I love all my children exactly the same." It was a lesson their children carried with them throughout their lives. As they grew older and started families of their own, they passed down the story of how their parents had found each other, how their father had claimed their eldest brother as his own, how love had triumphed over circumstance and hardship. James eventually took over management of the ranch, proving himself to be as capable as his father. He married a kind young woman named Catherine, and they gave Cole and Eliza 6 grandchildren to spoil. Sarah became a teacher, opening a school in Amarillo and dedicating herself to education. The twins went into business together, starting a supply company that served ranches throughout the region. Through it all, Cole and Eliza remained the center of their growing family, the foundation upon which everything else was built. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their faces lined with the marks of a life well lived. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experiences and the knowledge that they had chosen each other every single day. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The house was filled to bursting with family, and the noise was tremendous, but Eliza would not have had it any other way. As she looked around at the faces of the people she loved most in the world, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Cole found her standing on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, in a gesture that had become as familiar as breathing over the decades. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, resting his chin on top of her head. "How lucky I am," Eliza said softly. "How blessed. 40 years ago, I was so lost, so afraid. I thought my life was over, and then I found you, and you gave me everything." "You gave me everything," Cole corrected gently. "You brought life to this ranch. You gave me children and grandchildren. You made me understand what love really means." "We gave each other everything," Eliza amended, turning in his arms to face him. "We built this life together." Cole smiled, that soft smile he reserved only for her, and kissed her gently. 40 years, and you are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." "Flatterer," Eliza accused, but she was smiling. "It is not flattery if it is true." Cole took her hand, leading her back into the house full of their family. "Come on, our grandchildren want us to tell them the story again." "Which story?" "The story of how we met. They never get tired of hearing it." So, they gathered in the parlor, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and told the story they had told 100 times before. About a desperate young woman who answered an advertisement. About a lonely rancher who took a chance. About love that grew slowly, steadily, until it became the foundation of everything. "So, Grandma's first husband left her?" one of the younger grandchildren asked, frowning. "That was mean." "It was," Cole agreed. "But sometimes the things we think are tragedies turn out to be blessings in disguise. If he had not left, your grandma never would have come to Texas. She never would have found this ranch. We never would have built this family." "I was heartbroken," Eliza added. "I thought my life was ruined. But your grandpa showed me that true love is not about pretty words and empty promises. It is about showing up every day and choosing to love someone through good times and bad. He promised me forever, and he has kept that promise every single day." "And I always will," Cole said, squeezing her hand. Their youngest grandson, barely 5 years old, crawled into Eliza's lap. "I am glad the mean man left you, Grandma, because then you found Grandpa, and then you had all the babies, and then they had babies. And one of those babies was me." Everyone laughed, and Eliza hugged the little boy close. "That is exactly right, sweetheart. Everything worked out exactly as it was supposed to." As the party continued late into the night, Eliza and Cole slipped away to their bedroom. They were older now, and the long days took more out of them than they used to. But as they climbed into bed together, the same bed they had shared for 40 years, Eliza felt the same sense of contentment and peace she always felt in Cole's arms. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I will love you for whatever time we have left, and beyond that, into whatever comes next." "I love you too," Cole replied, pulling her close. "My Eliza, my heart, my forever." They fell asleep together, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together, just as they had faced everything else for the past 40 years. The seasons continued to turn at the Double R Ranch. Spring brought new calves and the smell of wildflowers. Summer brought heat and hard work and long days in the saddle. Fall brought cooler temperatures and the satisfaction of a successful year. Winter brought frost and the need to prepare for the cold months ahead. Through it all, the Brennan family thrived. More grandchildren were born, and eventually great-grandchildren. The ranch passed down through generations, each one adding their own touches while maintaining the core values that Cole and Eliza had established. Cole lived to see his 82nd birthday, still working the ranch he loved until the very end. He passed away peacefully in his sleep one autumn night, Eliza at his side, his hand clasped in hers. His last words were, "Thank you for giving me the best life a man could ask for." Eliza mourned him deeply, but she did not fall apart. He had taught her to be strong, to face whatever came with courage and grace. She lived another 5 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, telling stories of the past and delighting in the present. She passed away on a spring morning, with flowers blooming outside her window and James holding her hand. "Go find your papa," James whispered. "He has been waiting for you." Eliza smiled, her eyes closing for the final time. And in her last moment, she felt young again, standing in Cole's kitchen for the first time, being offered hope when she had none. Felt his arms around her as he promised to protect her. Felt his kiss on their wedding day. Felt the weight of their babies in her arms. Felt 47 years of love compressed into one perfect shining moment. She had been promised forever by a man who broke that promise. But then she had found another man, a better man, who had kept that promise until his last breath and beyond. And that, Eliza knew, as she let go of the world, had made all the difference. The Double R Ranch stands to this day, passed down through 6 generations of Brennans. In the parlor hangs a portrait of Cole and Eliza, painted on their 40th wedding anniversary. They look out from the canvas with love in their eyes and slight smiles on their faces, forever young, forever together. Cole Brennan and Eliza Hartwell married April 10th, 1883. He was born in 1869. She was born in 1867. They were married in 1883. He was 34 years old. She was 36 years old. They had one child. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Cole Brennan. Their child was born in 1884. Their child was named Eliza Hartwell. Their child was born in Eliza Hartwell, married April 10th, 1883. He promised her forever and kept that promise. Below it, in different handwriting, someone added, "True love is not about pretty words. It is about keeping promises, especially the ones you make with your actions instead of your voice. It is about choosing someone every single day, through joy and heartbreak, through plenty and want, through youth and old age. It is about building a life together, one day at a time, until those days add up to forever." And below that, in yet another hand, "They showed us what love looks like. We carry their legacy forward in our own marriages, our own families, our own promises kept. Thank you, Great-Great-Grandpa Cole and Great-Great-Grandma Eliza, for showing us the way." The story of Cole and Eliza Brennan lived on long after they were gone, told and retold to each new generation. It became a touchstone for the family, a reminder that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, that redemption is always possible, and that a promise kept is worth more than 1,000 promises made. Their graves sit side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a spreading oak tree that provides shade in the summer and shelter from the wind in the winter. The headstones are simple. Cole Brennan, 1852 to 1934. Beloved husband, father, grandfather. He kept his promise. Eliza Brennan, 1860 to 1939. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she found her forever. And every year, on their wedding anniversary, the family gathers at those graves to leave flowers and tell stories and remember the love that started everything. Children who never knew them personally still know their story, still understand the lessons they taught through the way they lived their lives. Love is not about perfection. It is about commitment. It is about seeing someone at their lowest point and choosing to lift them up instead of walking away. It is about taking what is broken and making it whole. It is about promises kept, not just in words, but in actions taken every single day. Cole promised Eliza forever, and he kept that promise. In doing so, he not only saved her life, but created a legacy that would touch countless lives for generations to come. And Eliza, who had once believed her chance at happiness was lost forever, found something better than she had ever imagined. She found real love, the kind that endures through everything, the kind that builds something lasting and beautiful. Their story was not without hardship. They faced drought and disease, financial struggles, and personal losses. They buried friends and watched their children face their own challenges. But through it all, they had each other. And that, in the end, was everything. The sun sets over the Double R Ranch now, just as it did 150 years ago when Eliza first arrived. The land has changed, technology has advanced, the world has moved on. But the values that Cole and Eliza Brennan established remain. Family matters. Promises should be kept. Love is worth fighting for. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the doorway to the best thing that ever could have happened. A young couple stands on the porch of the old house now, looking out over the land that has been in their family for generations. They are the latest caretakers of the Double R, the newest keepers of the legacy. They know the story, have heard it 100 times. And as they stand there, hands linked together, they make their own silent promises, to love each other through everything, to build something lasting, to keep their promises, always and forever, to honor the memory of the two people who started it all, with nothing but hope and determination and love. The story of Cole and Eliza Brennan is not just their story. It is the story of everyone who has ever been broken and found healing, everyone who has ever been abandoned and found acceptance, everyone who has ever believed their chance at happiness was gone, only to discover it was waiting for them just around the corner. It is a story about second chances and new beginnings, about the family you were born into and the family you choose, about the promises that matter and the ones that last, about a woman who needed saving and a man who needed someone to save, about how they saved each other and built something beautiful from the ashes of what came before. And it is a story ultimately about love, real, lasting, transformative love, the kind of love that sees you at your worst and stays anyway, the kind of love that builds cradles and homes and futures, the kind of love that keeps its promises, no matter what. He promised me forever, then left me pregnant, Eliza had whispered in her darkest hour, not knowing if she would survive what came next. I will keep that promise, Cole had said, not knowing that those simple words would become the foundation of a love story that would echo through the ages. And he did keep that promise, every single day, in every way that mattered for the rest of his life and beyond. That was his gift to her, his greatest achievement, his most important legacy. He promised her forever, and forever was exactly what she got.